Thank you very much, and very good evening to all the guests and all who are present here. It's a very interesting topic, and I'm sure that since morning there have been several of these conversations which you've seen, and you're understanding from a perspective of what's happening across the globe. And today we are standing at a state where in another 3 or 4 months we're going back to COP29, in which we will be in fact be asked as India on all the questions on what we have been doing. It's the year of the global stocktake under the Paris Agreement in 2015. It was decided that we will have nationally determined contributions, and based on those, we will evaluate it every 5 years. And this is the year when the evaluations have happened. The IPCC AR6 report has also come out. It says that we do have a very brief period of another, give or take, 4 or 5 years, in which we need to make heavy investments into these low carbon pathways to actually be on track to the 1.5 degree centigrade temperature rise. There are several of doomsday scenarios which are in place, which also one of the key things which also we know that the temperature will rise around and touch 2 degrees centigrade within the next 4 or 5 years. This is a year also of the El Nino effect. We are going to have lesser rains than what we have seen before, and this is going to affect many of the things, including renewable energy generation is one such aspect. So given the aspects of how climate change is playing its own role, and what we are trying to do over here as all professionals in this space is something that will be seen by the entire world across for the next coming years. And I would like to now open the floor and ask Venu about his views and on energy transition as such, and what we see over here in India and globally, and we'll take it forward from there.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashish. Good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know that we are the fog end of the long day, and so that's the reason Ashish was talking about, we will make a two-way communication. We'll give more time to, ask the question so that all of us, we can learn together on that. So the energy transition, we all know the purpose and why it is, and it is accelerated even more after the COVID, right? And we really look at the scenarios of the world as well as India, it's almost same. Today, the world's energy in the range of 20% comes from fossil free. And India is also in the same range, ballpark, plus minus 1% this one. So 80% still comes from the fossil. So that's the scale of that. And we all know that the CO2 emissions, more than 75%, whichever the year you take, more than 75% comes from the fossil fuel. So the energy transition is basically comprises of the three main things I would like to talk about it, where the lot of renewables is coming in. So the why renewables is coming in, because of the technology effect and volume effect is making the renewable itself is a business case and attractive for the investments. We all know that, photovoltaic, for example, it used to be a dollar per kilowatt hour cost, and today it is less than few cents per kilowatt hour, and that's making the solar itself is very cost effective and business case in that. And also we are seeing year on year, the whole ecosystem of the solar system is coming down. For example, last year, 21, solar prices have come down by 12%, and then wind came down by 9% in that. So the more you use and the more technological effects and the volume effects are bringing down and making this more attractive, and that's the reason the penetration of these resources is gaining traction across all the countries, including in India, and we talk more on that. The second part of the energy transition is is more of how do we ensure that, first on the supply side, second standpoint on the demand side, the lot of electrification, the electrification in terms of the transportation, electrification in terms of the buildings, and also use of electrification in all the industrial processes, etc. And that is also is accelerating in every part of the country, including in India in that. So need for more electrification is also accelerating in that. And the third, which is also important, is in addition to this thing, is like alternative energy carriers such as hydrogen. Green hydrogen is also gaining the ground. If you add these three things, the energy transition is incomplete in that. And if you really look at the world as how much is the electricity, if you take as 100% as electricity, 100% energy, today we are talking about around close to 20% is electricity used as part of the energy. And we have done our own studies, and then various other studies, for example, IEA and other reputed global organizations have done the study. By 2040 and 2050 scenario, this electricity is going to be doubled as part of the energy system. So from the 20% from now is going to be at least 40% or even more. And this acceleration is depending upon the country, is faster or quicker, those are the things in that. So the electricity is like a backbone of the entire energy system going forward in that. And that has been clearly visible across the geographies and across the countries and including in India. Take case of India, you all know that government has an ambitious commitment of 2070 net zero, and that's a 2071 part. But they also have a very ambitious commitment by 2030. The 2030, we want to have a 500 gigawatt of renewable, 50% of energy of this country met through the renewables, and also has targets on reduction of the CO2 and also production of the green hydrogen, etc. Has all those things are, what does it mean basically is that we need to do at least 3 to 4 times what we have been doing to achieve that. So if we miss this 2030, then we have a huge challenge. As Ashish was talking about, the 1.5 degrees centigrade, and even though as per IEA, still not giving up, right? So based on the present situation, we are exceeding that. But if we take a decisive actions now, in the next 2 years or 3 years, we can correct this course of this 1.5 degree pathway in that. So basically what we're saying that we really need to act now and act together on accelerating these energy transitions, Ashish.
Thanks, Venu, and those 3 pillars, excellent summary of what things we need to see. But at the same time, we were also discussing it a while back that we need to innovate. Also, at the same time, having these 3 pillars, but also need ecosystems which need to develop. There has to be good cooperation and coordination between finance flows as well as the technology aspects and the development of the country. All 3 need to go hand in hand. So development of these ecosystems and also from the perspective of how it needs to be at the same time profitable as well. So the balance between all of these aspects and going forward in energy transition needs to be in place. So your views on it?
Yeah. Absolutely, Ashish. I think the good part is that the technologies which are required for these energy transitions are available. It may not be 100% complete, but you don't need to wait for 100% to complete to deploy the technologies. What is required is for the energy transition to reach our milestones, goal states, start deploying the technologies which are available. I give you one example in the energy landscape because HVDC technology, high voltage DC current technology, used to be like a very niche technology for transporting the long distance power, over thousands of kilometers, more than 6 gigawatt of power. That was a technology which used to it. But now this technology has become like, a very routine technology because the grids are becoming a more and more complex. They are very connected, interconnected within the country. Take, for example, in India, we have one common grid, one grid and one nation, one frequency. This will enable anyone can set up a plant and start wheeling in elsewhere, and that is where is the flexibility this technology, these grids are enabling, are creating that opportunities for all of us. And these technologies are need to be deployed at a scale and the speed. It's not only the technology standpoint, but also the business models need to be evolved over a period of time in that. We cannot have the same run-of-the-business models doing everything by someone, but we need to have more collaboration across the stakeholders, across the industry thing, bringing all the technologies, whatever the technology we have, which is a future-proof, those technologies deployed, at the same time working on other pathways. The pathway to net zero is not one, it is a multiple pathways, right? So whenever we have these multiple pathways, we start working on one and then getting onto the second one and third one and so on and so forth would be that.
So specifically, Venu, what would you think is in terms of just the sheer finance and sheer needs till 2030? It's estimated somewhere close to 5.8 to 5.9 trillion dollars is required for all the indices to be the committed indices to be to be achieved. Now, with the sheer scale of financing requirement, then how do you think the industry can come forward in helping this energy transition happen? So, are there any thoughts, and with all the collaborative talks which you do on an everyday basis, what do you think and how industry can come forward?
I think this is absolutely, this is a very, very interesting point, Ashish, you talked about in that. So definitely all these things, from a normal funding standpoint, it's not the business as usual case, right? If you really look at, if you want to have a more renewable, on top of that, the grids to be more strengthened and the demand management, all those things, the scenarios, if you are looking at it, that needs additional funding. So you have a base case scenario, every country and every organization working on that base case scenario, and then you have a hybrid case scenario with a fossil plus renewable, and then if you really want to accelerate, where do we do that? So we have to always a balance between this return on investment standpoint, because that's for sure in that. But what I'd like to tell you is that, the industries, in addition to the governments, has a role to play, a very big role to play. The whole energy transition is so complex, and it's such a big, animal. It's not possible for any one country or one organization to do that. It is a collaborative approach by the organization, within the country and among the countries, etc. in that. So a lot of organizations have also started on the net zero goals. So if you give one example about our own company, Hitachi Energy, where I come from, and we have set our own sustainability 2030 targets. So basically what we want to be by 2030, we want to be carbon neutral in our own operations across the globe. So we operate in 90 countries, and we also consume a lot of CO2, not only in our own factories, in our own supply chain, but also both down the hills, but also upstream with our customers in that. So it's quite a challenging task. But when we looked at our first target that we want to be, all our factories, facilities, and our project sites to be fed through, fossil-free energy, we achieved much ahead of the curve at a much relatively, I would say, is a lower cost than what we used to do that. So there is a cost element, but if you put all those things, but it makes a business case for the company to start accelerating the net zero commitments or carbon neutral strategies within that. So this will be a big help to the countries as a whole on that, Ashish.
Well said, Venu. I think this is not a BAU scenario as anybody would have seen. So this also calls for another element of also thinking about how to take forward the entire community as well. While we are going through this phase of low carbon growth pathways as well as energy transition, it's also to be seen how we do it right, or we all popularly known as just transition, right? So when we are going through this and we know that today this is going to be the reality, the industry and the government and common people have to come to a common understanding about this energy transition. And what are your views on this aspect, on say capacity building, and also on the aspect of adaptation and other related activities while going through this mitigation activities?
I would absolutely, again, this is extremely important. First, I would like to focus more on the awareness part of that. Even though we are talking a lot, talk about a 1.4 billion people, how many of them will aware about it? So first, we need to accelerate this awareness. I give you one example. I've just flown on Friday from Zurich to Singapore. My ticket issued by Swiss Air has how much of CO2 emissions. Okay. So this is the thing. The moment I see, yeah, I am consuming or I am responsible for 16,000 CO2, kgs or whatever it is that. So this awareness needs to be accelerated. Everyone, whatever action we are doing, whether we are traveling, whether we are going there, or whether we are our products. So we are also taking a lot of action. For example, every of our product goes into a particular thing when we are going to define. We are not there yet. We're going to be defining that how much of this CO2 comes. By taking small actions, how can we reduce? We need bigger actions. Also, we need to do actions on that, and small actions on that. On the capacity building, for example, country as a whole, we have a huge challenge. Even though we say our per capita consumption of both electricity as well as the CO2 are much lower than the average, but that is not going to be the same, because the moment our electrical per capita consumption goes up, then it also has a multiple effect on the CO2 emissions as well in that. So we have to have the education, capacity building, skill sets, and making all the industries, and again, all the bodies have to come forward. These kind of forums are a very good sessions, awareness sessions, but we need to take forward, some of those learnings and cross collaboration within the industries and various, industrial forums, etc. need to work together to, very industry-specific, cases, use cases, and some of those cases, very happily we can copy with proud and then start implementing in many other industries, and that's how, we can accelerate in that, Ashish.
Thanks, Venu. And I think we've come to an end of our 20 minutes session on Fireside with Venu, and also a call for action from us both over here on the stage to all the individuals sitting in the room. Prime Minister also talks about sustainable lifestyles. I think when we are talking about energy transition, each one of us also needs to step up on this. We can't wait for just the industry to do its thing, or for government to do its thing, or the financiers to finance this energy transition. But at least from our perspective, each of us can actually do a lot on everyday basis, and that's a call from my end.